think there's so much growth and opportunity for content folks.
There's greater emphasis now on people in content roles. CMOs are seeing they're going to have more content creators in their organizations.
There's so many avenues that you can go down, so many paths you can take.
We've just finished one of the most important pieces of research that I think we've done in our history.
We are so excited to release the first ever Content Marketing Careers and Salary Outlook. We really wanted to dive deep into key issues for content marketers, like work-life satisfaction, career development, and pay expectations.
I think one of the most positive things that came out of the salary survey was how satisfied we are in content marketing as a practice and how successful we feel at it.
Your goal as a marketer is to be the world's best marketer for your company.
It offers rare insight into the aspirations of content marketing professionals.
Do you want to follow the content path upwards? Be the director of content, the head of content, the VP of content, the chief content officer.
If you love the intersection between art and science and the creative and the technical, this is exactly where you should be. This is the most fun you're gonna have in your career.
Content turns out to be this great superpower.
Hello, everyone. It's Amanda with the Content Marketing Institute. Thank you so much for joining me for our Monday Ask the CM World Community live stream, where each time we dive into a new topic with an awesome guest from our CM World community. Today's live stream is brought to you by the Content Marketing Institute. And if you're new here or you haven't heard of us, we are the leading training and education organization for all things content marketing. You can head over to contentmarketinginstitute.com to see what we have cooking. We've been very busy. We have a lot of research that came out lately. We do live streams. We have the latest news, weekly digital events, and more. So if you don't want to miss out, be sure to sign up for our newsletter so you stay on top of everything. All right, today it is a tough world out there for creators. Over half of Google searches end without a click. And social media platforms, they ding you for linking out. So what is a marketer to do? Well, what if you could beat the platforms at their own game by making zero-click content? That's what we are going to be chatting about today. So as you join me today, please give me a virtual wave. As always, say hello. Let me know where you are joining us from. I know it's a holiday week here in the US, but I know we have a huge international crowd that joins us each week. So be sure to ask questions and comments. It always makes for a more engaging live stream when we hear from all of you. All right, so let's get to it. Like I said, it's harder than ever these days to get people to click on that call to action, especially when the platforms do not want you to take people off their sites. So how do we fight that? Well, what about creating content with no need to click? What? You might be saying as a marketer. Well, that's right. Today, we're going to talk about the counterintuitive way for content marketers to succeed by creating something called zero-click content. And joining me today to chat about this is Amanda Natividad, the VP of Marketing at SparkToro. She's also a contributor to Adweek. I love this. I didn't even get a chance to ask you about this. A Le Cordon Bleu trained chef and a former journalist. She speaks at industry events all over. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me, Amanda. Thank you for this energetic introduction. This was lovely.
Yes. How does the chef training help you in marketing?
What I will say, I think the chef training has helped me to become thicker skinned because when you get the feedback from your, French chef who is yelling at you because the sauce isn't the right consistency, it's not quite the right color, it doesn't have enough seasoning, needs a little bit more fat, those things. And when you're getting this feedback, it's very much just this sauce isn't good, needs more flavoring, wrong texture, go try again. And that's how because things in the kitchen move so quickly, right? There isn't really any time to be like, hey, you know what? some of the other chefs and I, we've been really thinking about how we can improve your career. We've been thinking, that it's just boom, this sucks, go fix it. And kind of, it's not how marketing is today,
Yeah.
usually, right? But I think it helped me kind of train that muscle to receive feedback quickly and be like, oh, cool, that was wrong. Great, no problem. And it kind of taught me not to take some of this personally,
Yeah. Yeah. That's for sure. High
Yeah.
stress environment. I'm sure it's all the same, right?
Yeah. To some extent, yeah. Like when you all can critique a project or a thing, and try not to project yourself onto it and be like, oh, okay, I understand. Like this blog post didn't resonate with people for these reasons. Okay, great, lesson learned. I'll just try again next time. It's easier to kind of get to that mindset now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we have people joining us from all over. We have Marina from Bulgaria. We have Carolyn from DC. We have Lavinia from Toronto. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Zach from Cincinnati. We're so glad you guys are with us today. So if you have questions or comments, please be sure to drop them in the chat. All right, Amanda, let's get started here. What exactly is your definition of zero-click content? And why should marketers consider trying it?
Yeah, so zero-click content, it's actually a phrase that I coined kind of based on what I have been seeing in marketing and among creators over the past couple years, right? So the practice of zero-click content isn't really new. And what it is providing standalone valuable insights in a bite-sized format, where there's no need to click to learn more, and learning is only additive to your experience, not required. So an example of this, like the age-old example, not age-old, but the older example of this that kind of predates marketing, or a lot of what marketers have done, is Howard Stern, right? Howard Stern, the shock jock, radio host. He does these long form celebrity interviews on Sirius XM, right? I think they're sometimes 2-hour interviews. But then he posts the juiciest bits from these interviews in 2-minute clips on YouTube, right? And you can go on YouTube, watch these clips for free, consume them in of themselves, and you understand it within that silo of the 2 minutes. And you think, wow, that was that was funny, that was entertaining, that was so juicy, where you want to learn more, right? Because then you're like, oh, I want to watch the rest of the interview. But the only way to do that is to watch or listen to the full Sirius interview. So that's sort of the genesis of it. And I've been seeing more and more creators and marketers doing this, right? So in the form of Twitter threads, 100-word LinkedIn posts, where people are essentially summarizing their blog post in these LinkedIn posts, or taking the major themes of their blog post and distilling them into a Twitter thread, right? All standalone value that's native to the platform, right? Where, okay, yes, you might have to click on a LinkedIn carousel to keep going, but you don't have to leave the platform to consume the content or to understand it. And so the idea is that you understand, you consume, or you digest this standalone sort of thesis, and you go, oh, I'm buying into this idea. That's interesting. And you as the reader go like, all right, cool. I'll read the rest of it in the blog post.
Yeah. And so this is hard for marketers, right? So freely giving away this value with no hope necessarily of tracking ROI, that's like going against everything we've been taught as marketers. So what's this value in zero-click content if they actually don't click right then? Can't get trackable clicks.
Right. So I think, the way that I look at this is it's making your content more accessible, more digestible, more interesting, right? It's optimizing your content for it to get seen, for people to engage with it. So if you're going to repurpose a blog post, like, let's say you have an interesting, like really engaging blog post. If you repurpose that into a Twitter thread, that is always going to get more engagement than simply a tweet with a link to your blog post. And so from there, you're going to see more people like the thread, maybe leave a comment on it. Maybe they'll even, retweet some of the individual tweets in that thread. So it's making your content more palatable so that it gets consumed over time. And the way that I approach this is, maybe it's also just mixing it up with the posts that link out, right? So maybe you do like thread, all optimized for engagement. you kind of build up some of that algorithmic capital, or people are seeing your content more because you're posting in-platform content. And then maybe at some point you drop in a self-promotional link like, hey, our conference is in 3 months, buy a ticket, right? The stuff like that is pretty self-promotional. Most people aren't going to retweet that, right? But it's valuable to your audience. It's valuable to you as the marketer because you're trying to promote your company, your brand, your event. So that's sort of how I think about it. It's building up the sort of goodwill with your audience, building up some of that algorithmic capital, and then, hopefully cashing in on that at a later time.
So do you have any tips on how to get the executive leadership on board, right? And you're explaining this to them, do we need to retrain our teams to sort of, look at or place greater importance maybe on different metrics than just like the trackable visits?
Yeah, I think so. Because I guess the way that I'm envisioning zero-click content playing into most people's strategy is, what you're not doing is you're not telling your executive team, hey, we're only doing zero-click content. None of the content will ever link out to anything. We're never going to track anything. We're just going to put everything on Twitter and LinkedIn and hope for the best. That's not what we would say, right? What we would do and what we would say is, okay, we have this fantastic blog that's optimized for search. We're going after certain keywords in our niche. We are seeing organic traffic over time with this. So that's working. That's great. Our social media channels have been kind of taking the hit, right? Like, I'm sure you've noticed, boss, when we link to our blog posts, nobody's clicking on them. We're getting maybe like 3 likes. I was able to track 1 click, but the bounce rate was really high, so maybe they didn't read it. So that isn't working, obviously. And I'm saying this as like, by the way, I'm saying this as like, this is probably true for most brands, most companies. So then you're saying, well, what we need to do is get people to consume our content, right? And we need to get them to consume our content in a way that meets them where they are, right? So now we're going to take some of these blog posts, maybe not all of them, but some of them. We're going to start summarizing them as Twitter threads. Or we're going to take these listicles of like top 10 whatevers, and we're going to do a thread of the top 8. We're going to give away most of this in Twitter because people don't have time to click over to blogs. Content is more saturated than ever. We're getting fewer and fewer clicks from all these referred channels. So we need to make all of this stuff more interesting and better so that people will stop scrolling and actually look at our content. And from there, when we do this listicle of like the top 8 out of the 10 things in the blog post, we're starting to get them into the funnel. Like, they're interested in this. And when we drop in the link at the end that says, by the way, if you want to see the other 2 in this list, click over here to the blog post. At that point, that thread will have enough impressions, engagement, that it's going to get served up better in Twitter's algorithm, and therefore people will be more likely to click on it. Like, we're going to get more clicks this way, counterintuitively, right? We're going to get more clicks this way than if we were to just drop a link into a tweet. So we're doing all this to build goodwill with our audience, to get people to actually engage with the content we're already creating. And long term, we're going to get a lot more out of this content, right? This one blog post, we're going to turn it into a Twitter thread. It'll turn into a LinkedIn post. If we have video budget, we're going to turn this into Instagram Reels or a TikTok. Maybe we'll even do a complimentary YouTube, video on this. All of this derived from one blog post. So if nothing else, we're going to get a lot more bang for our buck. Like, whatever we're spending on content, we're going to get at least 3 or 4 more assets out of this.
Mm-hmm. That's great. If you're just joining us, I'm talking with Amanda Natividad from SparkToro. We're talking about this idea of zero-click content. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to drop it in the comment section there. All right, Amanda, you have some templates that you have to create this zero-click content, and I love this. One of them is you call "Give Away the Punchline." Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so that's a fun one. That's one of the frameworks that I've taught to people, which is, if you're writing some kind of blog post, especially one for which you are proving a thesis, right? That's the kind of blog post that is kind of more opinion based, like think op-ed type of blog post, where you're driving towards a a well done conclusion or some kind of gut punching conclusion or some kind of punchline, right? A kind of post that leads up to something like, whoa, that conclusion was great, right? That kind of thing. That is the kind of thing that I'm going to say works really well for giving away the punchline. And again, counterintuitive, because you're going to think, no, I wrote this blog post and you have to read the blog post. You need the context to enjoy the punchline. But there's a way that you can do it that you don't have to do it that way. And so what I'll do here is I can, if I can share my screen, actually, I can show this to you.
You can.
Let's see. I can. It's okay if I can't. But a while back, I think earlier this year, earlier this year at SparkToro, I did this blog post about audience personas, and it was this whole notion that, you know, marketers shouldn't be creating or thinking about buyer personas, right? They should be thinking more broadly and more comprehensively about their whole audience, which is an audience persona. So this includes people who might pay attention to you, people who might amplify you. So this includes, you know, peers, reporters, VCs, analysts, right? All people who might be able to pay attention to you. And so what I did in this blog post was I made the case for why you don't need a buyer persona. And it all led into this punchline. I can show you the blog post and scroll through. Okay. All right. If you cannot see my screen, I assume that someone will say that Amanda will let me know.
There you go.
All right. So we have this blog post from SparkToro. You don't need a buyer persona. You need multiple audience personas, right? So great blog post. It's kind of long, have a bunch of stuff. What does it all lead up to, right? And in the end, it leads up to this fake buyer persona template, which is a joke template. It has all this silly stuff that I included. And the whole point of this was, if you're going to create buyer personas, or the way we've been creating buyer personas isn't actually that useful. And it contains stuff like this: a pithy statement. Marketing Amanda is a whiskey-loving ragtag control freak with a zest for marketing, and you guessed it, life, which tells you nothing as a marketer who is marketing to this persona, right? So this was the whole punchline. I posted this on Twitter as like a standalone tweet to kind of tease the blog post. And actually, I should probably pull that up. Sorry.
That's okay.
And it did really well. So, okay, this performed really well on Twitter. So back to sharing my screen. Okay, great. So I made this. So I tweeted this. I made this buyer persona template. Feel free to steal it. And it got over 500 likes, got like 50 retweets. And then, you know, I followed up with a link to my blog post after it gained some traction, right? So it gave away the punchline. It works in of itself, right? Like every marketer knows buyer personas. But when you see this, you go like, oh, I get it. And you reflexively understand it. So that drove a lot of engagement to the blog post. And then what I also did was we also did a webinar on this same topic. So a webinar version of this blog post. In the blog post itself, there was a call to action to join for the webinar and say, oh, by the way, we're doing a webinar on this date. Click here to join. And then I also did the same thing in our email promotion. I put in that fake buyer persona slide in the email promo. And for months, actually, many months, this was our most clicked on email of the year. Like, so people actually were clicking on it and signing up for the webinar, and the webinar got over 900 registrants. So I think that's a very clean example of finding a clever way to lead with your punchline and just put it out there and trust that your audience will notice, they'll respect it, they'll react if you kind of take that chance on it.
Yeah, Gemma is asking, with zero-click blog post content, would you create visuals to help back up the text in the social post?
Yeah. So I think I saw this question from Gemma come through as I was showing this. So totally, yeah. So I think if you can create visuals that are additive to the experience, right, that help better convey an idea in the post, I think that's a great way to do it, because if that idea and that visual can kind of stand alone, like the way that this fake buyer persona template did, I think that'll perform really well. People scrolling on social usually like to see visuals.
So you also have a lot of stuff in your framework. So we can link back to Amanda's blog post or article on this. But you also have this idea of leading with emotion, right? Leading with a rant. And I think that's actually that's a great way to actually tell if the content that you're thinking about maybe doing more on resonates with an audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great way to test ideas, whether it's from seeing if people share that feeling, right? They're like, "Oh, I agree," or it's a way to test it in yourself. Like if you have a rant about something and you want to take it to task, and you're like, "I'm going to write this post on it," that gives you like a little bit of fire to get started, right? Because then, assuming you have this great, fully kind of fleshed out rant and you have your blog post, then you're kind of crystallizing all those ideas, hopefully, backing it up with some kind of evidence, right? And giving your idea some legs. And starting with that kind of emotional place just makes it more interesting. It's going to shine through in your writing style and your tone. And I would wager that most people will be more likely to engage with it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Amanda. These are all really fascinating ideas for promoting your content. Where can people, if people want to learn more about you, SparkToro, where can people find you?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about me, my personal site is on amandanat.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there. I'm also on LinkedIn and Twitter as Amanda Nat. You can also find me at SparkToro. So check out SparkToro. We provide audience research tools to help you do better marketing, like better content marketing, for instance. SparkToro.com for that.
Awesome. So I will, when this is over, I'll drop that link to your, it might have been in the description too, but I'll drop it in again in the chat for your article with many more great ideas on this idea of zero-click content. So thank all of you for your questions.
We do have one more question. I can answer it if we have time.
All right. She says, there's an article on LinkedIn. Would you do an ad campaign for that or a separate post and then do the camping for that post?
Maybe that's a typo. Let's see. So there's an article on LinkedIn, but I do an ad campaign for it or do a separate post. I wouldn't do an ad campaign just to drive clicks to a blog post, especially because LinkedIn advertising it's so expensive. So what I would do is I would drive an ad towards getting people to sign up to an email list. It could be a blog post, right? Like if it's some kind of lead magnet, maybe that would work. But what I would do is try to make that ad spend more efficient by driving it towards an email capture.
Great. Thank you all for the questions and the comments. If we missed something, I'll make sure to send it on to Amanda for her to answer as well. So thank you so much, Amanda, for joining me today. And thank you all of you for joining us. I think we have maybe one more live stream left before the end of the year in December. So I will see you all. For those in the US celebrating Thanksgiving, have a great holiday. You too, Amanda. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you.